Men who were told no by the parents of your wife when you asked them for their permission to marry their daughter. What happened? My wife's family was strong Southern Baptists and I was some military guy who came from a broken home. The dad instantly didn't approve of me. Over the course of a year we continued to date and I did my best to be a suitable boyfriend. Orders came for me to go to Afghanistan and I knew I was in love and she was for me. I brought her dad out to breakfast and asked his permission. He flat out said no because I was not a good enough Christian. I looked at him and told him I didn't give a crap what he thought and we are going to go through with it. Things got real ugly and he went ballistic on my wife. He was a verbally abusive person. After the dust settled, we had a small $500 wedding. None of our family was there. We invited 6 of our good friends and had Jimmy John's cater. Today is 7 years of our marriage and we are as happy as ever. I married the best woman in the world and her dad has apologized about the whole ordeal. Her family loves me now and it all worked out in the end. Good on him for apologizing. Friend of mine was told no. Her family had never met him and didn't know who he was, so it was reasonable. He honored their disagreement and proceeded to date her dad. Took him out to eat and talk once a week for 6-8 weeks. After that, dad gave his approval. This is wholesome. I approve. He didn't say no, but he told me look, it's great with me, but it's not going to happen. She's never getting married. Just past 4 years, but it did take me a couple of years to get her to say yes. Sounds like a good dad. Wish you both the best. Not married but recently engaged. At the time, I had been with her for 3 years. We met in college and I moved 1,600 miles to be with her after I dropped out. She was starting her career in finance while I could barely scrap by as a bartender who couldn't stay sober and spent all of my free time glued to video games. She was quite literally the only bright spot in my life. Her parents and I did not have the best relationship. Honestly, they saw me for what I was, a dropout who would end up hurting their daughter. Her father said no. He played it off nice. He said he wanted me to get a degree in business to prove that I could take off her. He said I wasn't ready. Things got worse when I overheard an argument between my girl and her mom. Her mom was upset about a career move my GF had made since it was extremely risky in that if it doesn't work out, who are you going to fall back on to support you? Kilgannon sure as heck can't and you know it. In addition to a bunch of other life factors, my drinking took a turn for the worse. I spent the next almost 2 years in a drunken haze. I was so angry that they couldn't see my love for her and just give her to me. I didn't need a good job, a stable foundation, or even a clear head to take care of a wife and future children. I just needed my love for her and that would make everything work out. Well, of course it didn't. I hit my rock bottom on November 1, 2016. I finally realized that if I didn't stop my drinking that day I would lose her and I would let my alcoholism kill me. Life gave me an ultimatum and I chose to give sobriety a shot. I worked my butt off to repair the damage I had caused throughout my life. I finally put plans in motion to secure the career I wanted, running my own restaurant, and turned my life around. After a year sober, I asked her parents again, almost 3 years after I had first asked. It was a completely different response. They immediately said yes and wanted to help any way they could in the proposal and were ecstatic. They said no because I wasn't good enough for her and they were right. I wasn't good enough for anyone, not even myself. They said yes because I decided to grow the frick up and stop trying to outrun my problems. I might add that I think I have become a pretty okay guy through all of this. This one is my favorite. This is a story about how the man's parents said no. A friend is an Arab lady from a working class background that got completely rejected by the man's parents who are of Pakistani affluent origin after he proposed to her without telling his parents because he knew they would say no. They wanted him to marry from the pool of other people in his class and race. 5 years on, both of them completely heartbroken and unwilling to move on told their respective parents that if they don't get to be with each other then they'll happily die alone and both parties refused all and every attempt to date or be set up with any other people during this time. At the end of this 5-year period, The man's grandmother was unwell and she was dying. She was in the hospital and called for the man and his parents to speak to her privately. The man was very close to his grandma. She said she wanted him to marry her and for his parents to unify against the rest of the family because he should be more important to them than what the others have to say. She made it her dying wish and called over the family lawyer to explain to his parents that her will had been structured in such a way that any money will only be given to them if those two got to get married, and if they do not do it within 3 months of her passing then the lady will get everything. They agreed, unsure if they were motivated by the cash, and she unexpectedly died the next day. They got married 6 weeks later. Granny died at peace knowing her last act in this life was an act of love which according to the will was dated 5 years ago. She knew and never questioned their loyalty to one another cause she understood what love meant for them. It was super emotional at the wedding. The Arabs that got invited actively rallied around the girl and protected her from the hateful stares of some of the groom's family members. It was a gorgeous yet somber event. I'm sorry, I'm just sure there's someone cutting onions in your cake day cake. I was dating my girlfriend for 5 years before I went to her parents to ask what they would think of me proposing to their daughter. After they told me no, I let them know that I would take their opinions into consideration. I then told them that I was coming to them to make them aware of my intentions to propose, rather than truly asking for permission. They didn't like that very much. By the time I finally proposed to my girlfriend, they had taken it upon themselves to tell her all of the reasons why an engagement to me would be a bad idea, and why she should stay single. She said yes to my proposal, but was so conflicted that she changed her mind about half an hour afterwards. She broke it off with me just a few months later. I was in Afghanistan. I called her dad from the USO tent one night and asked him what he thought about me doing it at the airport when I got home after a 7-mo deployment. He said it was an awful idea and that we were too young, 21/19. I told him I was disappointed, but that I would respect his wishes and talk to the family about it when I got home. She ended up cheating on me and breaking up with me over the phone 2 weeks before I got home. We got back together briefly after I returned home, but it didn't last because of the cheating. She then went on to have a crippling H addiction and OD'd at least 3 times. I'm now 31 and very happily married to a woman that has never cheated on me, and I can't even fathom the possibility of anything like that happening. While I guess you could say I dodged a bullet, I am devastated that drugs consumed her life. I truly loved her. He said it was an awful idea and that we were too young, 21/19. I told him I was disappointed, but that I would respect his wishes and talk to the family about it when I got home. She ended up cheating on me and breaking up with me over the phone 2 weeks before I got home. I was in the military for 6 years and this story is so tried and true it hurts. My fiance's dad is a pie, overall pretty tough, hard conservative. We have the fun stuff in common like the gun hobby but not much else. We shared a smoke in his car outside of a dive 2 years ago, and I told him, you know, I'm going to marry your daughter. He said, that sounds nice but, respectfully, number. I was shook to the bone but said you think this is a game. He laughed and told me, I'm just joking. I would be honored. I figured he was going to say yes because we are pretty close by now, but my heart still almost stopped when he said no. That's actually hilarious. Well, they were upset and disapproving because I had already gotten her pregnant. They said she needed to leave me and have an abortion. When it became too late for that, they said she needed to leave me and give the baby up for adoption. After the baby was born, they said she needed to leave me and move back in with them and let them help her raise it. The baby was 7 months old when the wedding happened. Then they made one more effort by recruiting her sister to help convince my wife to divorce me and take the child back to their home, of course. Almost a decade later and now there are 4 kiddos and my wife's parents complain that we don't come see them enough and they can't figure out why we seem to like spending time with my parents more than them. I don't know why, but this story makes me happy. I think it's because you were more persistent than they were. My wife grew up with a single mom. I asked her permission. She sighed and told me, she won't make you a good housewife. She hates cleaning. She cooks okay, but I spent my life telling her that school is number 1 and never got her to lose weight, act like a woman, or anything feminine. If you want my blessing, you better accept she will never cook or clean for you. I replied I was marrying a human being, not a slave. She went, Okay then, you're a good man, a brave man, but the best boyfriend my daughter ever dated. So, we were married 25 years before my wife died from sarcoidosis. Mum was right, she was a terrible housekeeper, but an amazing partner. I miss her every day. That took a sad turn, my genuine condolences. When my husband asked my dad said yes. Then later in the weekend, my dad pulled my husband aside and said, wait, I forgot to ask, do you love her? Of course, my husband said yes. So my dad got all misty-eyed and shook his hand. Because my mother can be an incredibly emotional and reactive person, my dad waited until we left to tell her because she would have given it away to me. Tuesday of the following week, my husband gets a call at work from my parents on speakerphone. It's my dad talking, but my mother's words, they want my husband to wait a year to ask me so I can have a year on my own to live independently and focus on my career. I was about to start my first year teaching. My husband was flabbergasted, said something rude, and asked me anyway like a month later. Not me, but my friend. After her father told him no, he decided to wait a little bit and find a way to prove his worth towards his in-laws. After a couple of weeks he found out she was seeing someone else. Her father knew this all the way and just wanted to keep him safe from his butthole dog there. Currently, she is married to another guy not involved in this story. Friend needs to send ex-dad a bottle of scotch. My great-grandfather announced his intention to marry my great-grandmother to her parents as he walked through the front door. The first time he met them, his future father-in-law laughed and literally kicked him out the open front door. My great-grandfather just kept coming back to their house and pretty much harassed them until his future father-in-law got too annoyed and just gave up. Ah, the good old I won't frick off. I didn't ask. Don't regret it, because I know he would have said no. The only other time I've ever spoken to him, he was super rude to me. Not in a you're not good enough for my daughter way, but a I don't like you as a person way. When we told him, he called me mad fool and walked out of the room. Her mother walked her down the aisle. Not me but my parents. My mom's parents disapproved but they got married anyway. So to get back at my parents she made them wait for her to get there before they start the ceremony. She was an hour late, and my mom didn't want to start without her. She called my grandma and when she finally picks up she says they are on their way out. Another hour passes and my mom decides to call again. She finally picks up. She then says that she changed her mind and that she wasn't going after all. In all of my parents' wedding photos everyone has a somber look on their face. There's no other way to say it. Frick you, grandma. Classic not me answer, but it's a good story. A really close friend of mine had been dating his girlfriend for about 2 years when he brought the idea up to her dad. They had met in college when he was a junior, and she was a sophomore. Thing is, he'd graduated college about 6 months prior to the proposal conversation, and had secured an above average starting salary in his field at a good company, etc. Anyway, the complication was that the girl was still in school as a 4th year, and was going to need to stay as a 5th year senior to complete her degree, and then still kind of needed to feel out her graduate school career options. Basically, the girl's dad had some qualms about getting married so young. To be fair, my friend was 23 and she was 22, which was pretty young. Anyway, he explained that he, too, had been in love with his college sweetheart, but elected to wait on the marriage until both of them had settled careers, jobs, and then decided to reevaluate the situation. Long story short, the dad's college sweetheart basically became career obsessed upon graduation and ditched him, so I guess he was warning his own daughter's boyfriend on the possibilities. Anyway, the gist of the conversation was I don't approve of you marrying my daughter so young, but that doesn't mean I don't approve of you. Fair, overall, but still tough to hear. About a year later, she gets her dream job 2 states over and they have a tough conversation. Without a fuss, he left his job in favor of a different one in the other state in order to stay together. Kind of a slight here's your proof to the dad. About 3 weeks later, dad calls him crying, asking him to please marry his daughter. This was about a month ago. I'm pretty sure he's proposing within this summer. It must have sucked for your friend, but her dad sounds like a great guy, sharing his worries from his own experiences to the betterment of both, I'm sure, and then having the guts to pick up the phone and admitting his mistake. Just awesome. My grandmother's parents were upper class English. They disowned her the moment she dated my Royal Marine grandfather, probably because he wasn't an officer. Probably missed the boat for anyone to read this, but thought I would share. I proposed while my wife was still at high school. I was a year older and had been out of school 6 months. We met at high school and had been together 4 years when I asked her. The plan was to go to university and get married after. I asked her father for his blessing to propose the day before I did it. He said that we were too young to get married and that neither of us knew what we wanted in life. I thought he was an old man and didn't know what he was on about. She said yes, and her father took me aside later that week and told me that he wasn't going to make a fuss about it but to put the wedding off for a bit. I told him of our plans to finish university first and that seemed to appease him. To make an already long story longer, we were both in the middle of a natural disaster the following year. We made it out okay, but some of our friends did not. We both dropped out of university and moved back to our hometown. Looking back now, I can't see how we didn't notice we had both slipped into a deep depression. We got married 6 months later. I think the decision to bring the wedding forward was as much to give us something to look forward to as any real desire to be married so soon. I was just 21 and she was 19. At our wedding, her father gave his toast and said nice things, but you could tell he didn't agree with what we had done. It's now 7 years later and our son just turned 1. We got lucky. For 3 years we were both depressed and there was no love or passion in our relationship, just the need to not be alone. After getting professional help, we both managed to climb out of the pit of despair we had found ourselves in and found our love. The year we got married, 3 other couples in our circle of friends got married, mostly for the same reasons we did. Of the 4 couples who got married within 6 months of each other, we are the only ones still together. I'm not trying to say young love doesn't survive. I love my wife more today than I ever did while I was a hormone crazed teen. All I'm saying is 21 was young to get married, and even without a depression I think we are lucky to have made it. Similar but not marriage, just dating. She was from a Muslim family. I'm not religious and I'm also white. Her father and mother learned about our relationship and forbid her from seeing me. They took away all of her communication devices, car, and free time. She was really into school, college, and at one point she would get dropped off, go to school, and get picked up where she would stay at home. Well, I would see her at school, and I bought her a phone so that we could stay in contact. Throughout the relationship, her parents would threaten to take her out of school, which was super horrifying for her, and very detrimental to the relationship. That worked for a while until it didn't. This was one of the last messages I got. I am in actual real get married in Bangladesh danger and you are in violence type danger. Please love me enough to let me go. I wish this could have worked. I'm sorry. I do love you a lot, which is why I'm doing this. I would have done it in person. But my dad is driving me to and from school and watching me while I'm there. And well, it all fell apart. Not only did she cut off contact, she cut off all of her emotions. Later, trying to salvage whatever I thought I could make out of this, I would talk to her and she would be extremely cold, bitter, and mean. I did learn that her parents finally paid for her to move into a dorm, which is all I ever heard of her wanting. Nowadays, despite living with the experience of above, she refuses to talk to me, which I don't really mind, but I wonder what is going on in her head and if I was just a bystander or lives with any guilt about how things ended. Didn't ask. They didn't like me. She moved out when she turned 18. We got married a few months later. Had been dating a few years already. We have now been married for 11.5 years and have a 5-year-old son. I like how you included the 0.5 in there. I didn't ask because I knew they would say no. They never liked me because I was taking their baby away from them. In reality, she couldn't wait to leave the crap hole town they were from. So I proposed anyways. Her mom calls up the day after and says it's not too late to say no. We are still happily married with a little girl now. My granddad told my dad he wouldn't let him marry my mum. He went to the shed and got his shotgun and my dad left. He married her anyway. Balls o' steel. Just in case anybody was thinking of popping the big question anytime soon and now has the fear after reading this thread. My own quick story. Her dad is a giant burly dude who rides a Holly, runs a biker bar in central Scotland, looks exactly as you'd imagine a stereotypical biker. The dude's huge, massive pleated beard and dresses like he's straight from Soa. Soon as I mentioned my intentions he broke down into floods of tears. Couldn't be happier. Insisted we go straight to her grandfather's, who also immediately began crying, and the three of us then opened a whiskey and got smashed. Took her to Iceland. Proposed under the northern lights and still happily together. You'll 99% already know the answer before you ask. Huge dude. Huge heart. Great guy. Oh, one I can answer even if it gets buried. My parents told my husband no. They wanted me to 1. Finish grad school. 2. Stay home until my loans were paid off. 3. Get married at 30. And 4. Husband to buy a house. We got engaged anyway. They were didn't care. Bought a house. They bitched about the house we bought. Got married. Wedding was awesome. They have mellowed out over the years. We're 28 now, married just shy of 3 years, and my student loans will be paid this July. We also have a 1-year-old, and another on the way, and occasionally I'll say to them, see if I had waited we wouldn't have kiddo. They usually make a face but keep quiet because by all accounts it turned out great. My partner's father didn't say no. He immediately called her and asked what should I say? Completely ruined the surprise. Dong. He ruined the surprise, but it's pretty sweet that your partner's dad cared enough to make sure that he gave an answer that she would be happy with. Not me but my cousin. This was 8 years back, when he was living in a small coastal town. He had dropped out of college and wanted to marry his high school sweetheart, or whatever the Indian equivalent of that is. The situation was such that her father was not willing to permit his daughter to marry a guy who had no future prospects. My cousin's parents dissented to the marriage as they knew their son quite well. In fact, his dad made it known that the marriage did not have his blessing. My cousin and his bride-to-be eloped. They ran away in the middle of the night on his motorcycle. He stole 70,000 rupees, $1,000, from the safe before fleeing. 2 years later, the girl divorced him and moved back with her parents. Thankfully they didn't have kids. But my cousin was a bum and leached off of her salary and spent it all on vices. The girl remarried some years back. My cousin stays in a ramshackle apartment in the city, trying to gold down a job. His parents pay for the rent on condition that he is never to return home. He is not allowed to any of our family gatherings now, since one time he showed up drunk and tried to proposition another cousin's girlfriend in front of everyone. My in-laws do not like me at all. They tell people I am a new man. This is full of disapproval. Their other son-in-law was in prison for his child's first Christmas, but I once got the washing in off the line, so I am clearly worse than Satan. Old folk are weird. My great-grandfather did not give his blessing when my grandpa asked to marry his daughter. It wasn't too dramatic, but my grandpa basically informed him that they were already planning on getting married and that the lack of a blessing wouldn't stop that. The wedding announcement read so and so and so and so announced the marriage of their daughter so and so. The family joke is that it doesn't read are pleased to announce the marriage of their daughter. Very similar to what happened to my grandparents. Grandpa got a big no. I think you are a rebel and I don't trust you from grandma's dad. But he looked right in his eye and said, well, I'm gonna do it anyways. In the end, my grandpa was the one that carried great grandpa in his arms to the hospital a few days before he passed. The respect they had for each other was a beautiful thing. You don't ask for permission, you ask for their blessing. Blessing isn't a permission, rather it's a way to say, hey, I'm going to be asking your daughter to marry me. I want your support. Another way to think of it is that you're asking them to join your new family, not to join theirs. If they're not into it, that's on them, and your new family will have H and blackjack. And by H I mean pancakes and by blackjack I mean whiskey. Did it anyway. Her mom said yes and her dad is a psycho loser anyway. He came around after my wife laid down the law with him, made him apologize and everything. He had threatened to disown anyone that came to our wedding. LOL. Only he and his dad skipped it. I brought the baseball bat. I wanna make the rules. Except other people brought in Camus baseball bats. Not me, but my dad. My mom had gone to the States on a visa from Germany when she was 24 because she was sick of my grandmother being so overprotective and strict with her even at 24 and needed a change in her life. She was planning only staying for a year exploring and working for a cruise line company, but then she met my dad. They dated for about a year before my dad proposed to my mom. My dad, after the fact, called my grandmother and asked her permission, as my grandfather was out of the picture at that time. She said absolutely not, my daughter barely knows you. And her place is in Germany, not the US. He didn't like that very much, so he basically told her he was marrying my mom and she could either be happy for her and come to the wedding or stay in Germany and be upset. She grit her teeth and came to America for the wedding with my step-grandfather. My parents are happily married to this day, and my grandmother still hates my dad. She even pretends she can't speak English sometimes when we visit as a family. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.